The wind was howling like a wild animal across the frozen peaks of the Karakoram Mountains. Agent Malik Hassan pulled his thick jacket tight around his body. As he squinted through his binoculars at the endless white landscape ahead, his breath came out in small puffs of steam, and his fingers were already starting to feel numb despite his heavy gloves. "Another boring day in paradise," muttered his partner, Agent Rashid Ali, as he adjusted the thermal imaging camera mounted on their military vehicle. The machine was their eyes in this frozen wasteland, helping them spot any unusual movement or heat signatures along the Pakistan-China border. Hassan had been doing this job for 15 years now. Border patrol wasn't glamorous work, but someone had to do it. The mountains kept many secrets, and it was their job to make sure nothing dangerous crossed into Pakistani territory without them knowing about it. "Wait a minute," Ali suddenly called out, his voice cutting through the wind. "Boss, you need to see this." Hassan quickly moved over to look at the thermal camera's screen. There, glowing bright orange against the cold blue background, was a strange heat signature buried deep in the snow about 200 meters ahead of them. "That's weird," Hassan said, scratching his beard. "It's too big to be an animal, and too warm to be just rocks. Could be a crashed helicopter or maybe some equipment someone dropped," Ali suggested. "But why would it still be giving off heat after being buried in snow?" Hassan felt his heart start beating faster. In his years of experience, anything unusual in these mountains usually meant trouble. But his curiosity was stronger than his caution. "Let's check it out," he decided. "But stay alert. We don't know what we're dealing with here." The two agents grabbed their equipment and started walking through the deep snow toward the heat signature. Each step was difficult, and they had to stop every few minutes to catch their breath in the thin mountain air. The altitude here was over 14,000 feet, and even experienced climbers felt the effects. As they got closer, Hassan noticed something strange. The snow around the heat signature wasn't just piled up randomly. It looked like something had crashed here with great force, creating a crater that had then been filled with snow over time. "This happened a long time ago," Hassan observed, pointing at the edges of the crater. "Look how the snow has settled. This has been here for years, maybe decades." Ali was already unpacking their digging equipment. "Whatever it is, it's about 3 feet down. We're going to need to dig carefully." The two men started digging, taking turns with their shovels. The work was exhausting in the thin air, and they had to rest frequently. But as they dug deeper, Hassan felt more and more excited. This was definitely not a normal day. After 2 hours of digging, Ali's shovel hit something hard. "Got something," he called out. Hassan jumped down into the hole they had created. What he saw made his eyes go wide with shock. There, just below the surface, was what looked like a large piece of clear crystal or ice. But this wasn't ordinary ice. It was perfectly clear, and it seemed to glow with a soft, blue light from within. "What in the world?" Hassan whispered. But as he brushed away more snow, he saw something that made his heart stop. Inside the crystal, perfectly preserved, was a young woman. She looked to be about 17 or 18 years old, with long, silver-white hair that floated around her face like she was underwater. Her skin had a strange, pale blue tint, and she was wearing clothes unlike anything Hassan had ever seen. The fabric looked like it was made of metal, but it moved and flowed like silk. "Ali, get down here right now," Hassan called, his voice shaking. Ali slid down into the hole and let out a gasp when he saw what Hassan was looking at. Is she real?" Hassan pulled out his portable medical scanner, a device that could detect heartbeats and vital signs. His hands were trembling as he held it over the crystal. Beep, beep, beep. The scanner was detecting a heartbeat. "She's alive," Hassan whispered. "After all this time, she's still alive." Ali leaned closer to get a better look. "Boss, look at her hands." Hassan looked where Ali was pointing and felt his world turn upside down. The girl had 6 fingers on each hand, and her head, Ali continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's shaped differently than ours." Hassan realized his partner was right. The girl's skull was slightly longer than a normal human's, and her features, while beautiful, were somehow different from any person he had ever seen. We need to get her out of here, Hassan said, making a decision that would change everything. But we have to be careful. We don't know what this crystal stuff is or how it's keeping her alive. As they prepared to lift the crystal from its resting place, Hassan noticed something else that made his blood run cold. Scattered around the crater were pieces of metal that didn't look like they came from any aircraft he knew. The metal had a strange, rainbow-like color and seemed to be partially melted. "Ali, I don't think this girl is from around here," Hassan said quietly. "What do you mean?" Hassan looked at his partner with serious eyes. I don't think she's from this world at all." The two agents carefully lifted the crystal containing the mysterious girl and loaded it into their vehicle. As they drove back toward their base, Hassan couldn't stop thinking about what they had found. Who was this girl? Where had she come from? And most importantly, what were they supposed to do with her? Little did Hassan know that this discovery would soon change not just his life, but the entire world's understanding of what was possible in the universe. The frozen girl in the crystal would soon wake up, and when she did, she would have a story to tell that would shock everyone who heard it. The secure facility in Islamabad was buzzing with activity like a beehive that had been shaken. Agent Hassan sat in the corner of the main conference room, watching as dozens of officials argued back and forth about what to do with their discovery. The crystal containing the mysterious girl was now in a special room 3 floors below ground, surrounded by more security than the country's most important secrets. Director General Faiz Ahmed rubbed his temples as he listened to the heated discussion. He had been in charge of intelligence operations for over 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this situation. On his desk sat a thick file labeled Subject Alpha, the code name they had given to the frozen girl. "Sir, we need to contact the Americans immediately," said one of the senior officials. "This is beyond our capabilities. We need their advanced technology to study this properly." "Absolutely not," snapped another official. "This happened on Pakistani soil. This is our discovery, and we handle it ourselves." Dr. Amara Qureshi, the facility's chief medical officer, stood up from her chair. She was a woman in her late 30s with tired eyes and graying hair, but her voice was strong and confident. "With all due respect, gentlemen, we're talking about a living being here, not some piece of technology we found," she said firmly. "Whether she's human or not, she deserves to be treated with dignity." Hassan nodded in agreement. Ever since they had brought the girl to the facility, he couldn't stop thinking about her peaceful expression inside the crystal. Something about her reminded him of his own daughter, whom he had lost in a climbing accident 5 years ago. "Dr. Qureshi, what exactly are we dealing with here?" asked Director Ahmed. The doctor opened her laptop and projected images onto the wall screen. "Based on my preliminary scans, Subject Alpha appears to be a young female, approximately 16 to 18 years old. However, there are several significant differences from normal human biology." She clicked to the next image, showing an X-ray of the girl's skeleton. "Her bone density is 40% higher than what we would expect in a human. Her skull is elongated, and as Agent Hassan reported, she has 6 fingers on each hand." "Could she be some kind of genetic experiment?" asked one of the officials. "That's possible, but unlikely," Dr. Qureshi replied. "The crystalline substance surrounding her is unlike anything in our scientific knowledge. It's not ice, but it's maintaining her body temperature and vital signs perfectly. It's as if she's in some kind of advanced suspended animation." Hassan raised his hand to speak. "Doctor, is she suffering in there?" Dr. Qureshi's expression softened. "From what I can tell, no. Her brain activity suggests she's in a deep, peaceful state. But Agent Hassan, I have to be honest with you. The crystalline shell appears to be slowly degrading. We may not have much time to decide what to do." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. They had to make a choice soon: try to wake her up or let her remain frozen forever. "What are the risks if we try to revive her?" asked Director Ahmed. "Unknown," Dr. Qureshi admitted. "We don't know how long she's been in there, or what the revival process might do to her body. It could save her life, or it could end it. An older official stood up, his face serious. There's another issue we haven't discussed. What if she's dangerous? What if she's carrying some kind of disease or has abilities we don't understand? Then we study her while she's still frozen. Another official suggested. We take samples, run tests, learn everything we can before making any decisions about revival. Hassan felt his stomach turn at the thought. She's not a laboratory animal, he said quietly, but his voice carried across the room. She's someone's daughter, someone's sister, maybe someone's friend. Agent Hassan, we appreciate your compassion, said Director Ahmed, but we have to think about national security, about the safety of our people. What about her safety? Hassan asked, standing up. What about her rights? The room erupted in arguments again. Some officials wanted to contact other countries for help. Others insisted on keeping the discovery completely secret. A few suggested moving the girl to a more secure location. Dr. Qureshi watched the chaos with growing frustration. That evening, she found Hassan sitting alone in the facility's cafeteria, staring at a cup of tea that had gone cold. You're thinking about your daughter, aren't you? She said gently, sitting down across from him. Hassan nodded, not trusting his voice. His daughter Aisha had been an adventurous girl who loved climbing mountains. She had died in an avalanche while on a school trip, and Hassan had never forgiven himself for not being there to protect her. I see something in that girl's face, he finally said, something innocent and pure. She doesn't deserve to be treated like some kind of science experiment. Dr. Qureshi leaned forward. I've been thinking the same thing. I have a daughter too, you know. She's 22, studying languages at university. When I look at Subject Alpha, I see someone who might be scared and alone, far from home. So what do we do? Hassan asked. I've been running some tests on the crystalline material, Dr. Qureshi said quietly. I think I might know how to safely reverse the process, but it would have to be done carefully. Over several days, Hassan looked at her with surprise. You want to wake her up? I think we owe it to her to try, Dr. Qureshi said. But Hassan, if we do this, we have to be prepared for the consequences. If she wakes up and she's not what we expect, if she's dangerous, or if the process fails, then we'll deal with that when it happens, Hassan said firmly. But we can't just leave her frozen forever because we're afraid. The next morning, the arguments in the conference room continued. Religious leaders had been brought in to discuss the moral implications. Some said that if the girl was truly from another world, she was a gift from God and should be treated with kindness. Others worried about the religious implications of contact with non-human intelligence. Meanwhile, satellite images showed that other countries were becoming suspicious of the increased activity. At the facility, time was running out, and they still hadn't made a decision. Hassan and Dr. Qureshi exchanged looks across the conference room. They both knew that sometimes, when the system fails to do what's right, individuals have to step up and make the hard choices. That night, as the facility settled into quiet routine, Hassan made a decision that would change everything. He found Dr. Qureshi in her laboratory, studying the crystalline shell under a powerful microscope. Doctor, he said quietly, I think it's time we stop waiting for permission to do the right thing. Dr. Qureshi looked up at him and nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. Together, they began preparations for the most important procedure of their lives. The clock on the wall showed to 47 a.m. as Hassan and Dr. Qureshi quietly made their way to the secure medical wing. The facility was mostly empty at this hour, with only a few security guards patrolling the halls. Hassan's heart was beating so fast he was sure everyone could hear it. Are you sure about this? He whispered to Dr. Qureshi as they approached the room where Subject Alpha was being kept. No, she replied honestly. But sometimes being sure isn't as important as being right. They had spent the past 3 days secretly preparing for this moment. Dr. Qureshi had run countless computer simulations, studying the crystalline shell and figuring out the safest way to reverse the freezing process. Hassan had arranged for the security cameras to have a mysterious malfunction during their planned time frame. Inside the special room, the The girl lay exactly as they had found her, suspended in the glowing crystal. The soft blue light from the shell cast strange shadows on the walls, making the whole room feel otherworldly. "Remember, we have to do this very slowly," Dr. Qureshi said as she set up her equipment. "To fast, and we could shock her system. To slow, and the degrading crystal might fail before we finish." Hassan nodded, though his stomach was churning with nervousness. What if she wakes up and she's terrified? What if she doesn't understand where she is? "Then we'll be patient and kind," Dr. Qureshi replied, "just like we would with any scared child." The process began with carefully controlled heat lamps that slowly warmed the crystal from all sides. Dr. Qureshi monitored the girl's vital signs constantly, watching for any sign of distress. The crystal began to soften, becoming more liquid-like as the temperature rose. "Her heart rate is increasing," Dr. Qureshi announced after the first hour. "That's normal. Her body is starting to wake up." Hassan watched in fascination as the girl's silver hair began to move more freely in the liquefying crystal. Her skin color was slowly changing from pale blue to a more natural pink tone. "Look at her fingers," Hassan pointed out. "They're moving slightly." By the third hour, the crystal had become completely liquid, but it didn't pour away like water. Instead, it seemed to be absorbed into the girl's skin, leaving her lying dry on the medical table. "That's impossible," Dr. Qureshi muttered, staring at the readings on her monitors. "The liquid should have pooled around her, but it's completely gone." Suddenly, the girl's eyes snapped open. Hassan jumped back in surprise. Her eyes were the most beautiful shade of deep purple he had ever seen, and they seemed to sparkle with tiny points of light, like looking at stars in the night sky. The girl sat up quickly, looking round the room with obvious panic. When she saw Hassan and Dr. Qureshi, she scrambled backward until she hit the wall behind her. Then she opened her mouth and made a sound unlike anything either of them had ever heard. It wasn't quite singing, and it wasn't quite speaking. It was a melodic vibration that seemed to come from deep in her throat, rising and falling like a beautiful, haunting song. The sound was so pure and strange that Hassan felt tears forming in his eyes. "It's okay," Dr. Qureshi said softly, holding up her hands to show she meant no harm. "We're not going to hurt you." The girl stopped making the musical sounds and stared at them with wide, frightened eyes. She was breathing heavily, and Hassan could see that she was shaking. "She's terrified," he said quietly. "She has no idea where she is or who we are." Dr. Qureshi slowly approached the girl, moving like someone trying not to scare a wild animal. "Hello," she said gently. "My name is Amara. This is Hassan. We found you in the mountains." The girl tilted her head to one side like a curious bird. She made another series of musical sounds, but these were different, more questioning, like she was trying to communicate. "I don't think she understands our language," Hassan observed. "But she's trying to talk to us," Dr. Qureshi replied. "That's a good sign. It means she's intelligent and wants to communicate." Over the next few hours, they tried everything they could think of to communicate with the girl. They showed her pictures, tried different languages, and even attempted to copy her musical sounds. The girl watched everything with intense curiosity, but she seemed as confused as they were. Finally, Dr. Qureshi had an idea. She pulled out a piece of paper and drew a simple mathematical equation: 2 + 2 = 4. The girl's eyes immediately lit up with understanding. She took the pen from Dr. Qureshi's hand and wrote below it, 4 + 4 = 8. "Math," Hassan exclaimed. "She understands mathematics." This breakthrough opened up a whole new way of communicating. The girl began drawing symbols and equations that were far more advanced than anything Hassan had ever seen. Some of her mathematical concepts were so complex that Dr. Qureshi had to take pictures to show to experts later. The girl then started drawing pictures. First, she drew what looked like a round object with rings around it, possibly a planet. Then she drew smaller circles around it and pointed to herself. "I think she's trying to tell us where she's from," Dr. Qureshi said excitedly. Next, the girl drew what looked like a ship or aircraft crashing into mountains. She drew stick figures inside the ship, then crossed them out one by one until only one remained. She pointed to herself again. "Oh my God," Hassan whispered. "She's the only survivor." The girls seemed to understand that they were getting her message. She drew more pictures, images of her sleeping in the crystal, of time passing, of being alone for what looked like a very long time. Then she did something that broke Hassan's heart. She drew a picture of what looked like her family, tall figures with the same elongated heads. In six-fingered hands, she touched the drawing gently, and Hassan could see tears forming in her unusual purple eyes. "She misses her family," he said softly. "She's been alone all this time." Dr. Qureshi reached out slowly and gently touched the girl's shoulder. Instead of pulling away, the girl leaned into the contact, as if she desperately needed human connection. "We need to give her a name," Dr. Qureshi said. "We can't keep calling her Subject Alpha." Hassan thought for a moment. "The way she makes those musical sounds, it reminds me of a song." "What about Lyra?" "It's close to the word for music." The girl seemed to understand they were talking about her. When Hassan said Lyra, she pointed to herself and made a series of musical sounds that were similar to the name. "Lyra," Dr. Qureshi repeated, and the girl nodded enthusiastically. Over the following days, their communication improved dramatically. Lyra learned basic words in their language surprisingly quickly, and they began to understand her hand gestures and musical tones. She was incredibly intelligent, picking up new concepts faster than seemed possible. But Hassan couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Soon, their secret would be discovered, and they would have to explain what they had done. What he didn't know was that their actions were about to set in motion events that would change not just their lives, but the entire world's understanding of what was possible in the universe. Lyra had a story to tell, and it was more incredible than anyone could have imagined. 2 weeks had passed since Lyra's awakening, and the secret was getting harder to keep. Hassan found himself spending every free moment in the medical wing, fascinated by this incredible girl who had fallen from the stars. Dr. Qureshi had called in her daughter Zara from university, telling her it was for a special linguistics project. Zara was a bright young woman who had always been gifted with languages. When she first met Lyra, she was speechless for almost an hour, just staring at the girl with the purple eyes and silver hair. "Mom, this is impossible," Zara whispered to her mother in the hallway. "She's really not from Earth, is she?" "I'm afraid not, sweetheart," Dr. Qureshi replied. "But she needs our help to communicate. Can you work with her?" Zara proved to be exactly what they needed. She had a natural talent for understanding patterns in communication, and within days, she had created a basic system for translating Lyra's musical language into words they could understand. It was during one of these translation sessions that Lyra finally told them her incredible story. "My name is not really Lyra," she said through a combination of words, drawings, and musical tones that Zara carefully translated. "In my language, it sounds like Lyrale." Hassan smiled. "Lyrale is a beautiful name. Tell us about your home, Lyrale's." Eyes grew distant as she began to share her story. Through Zara's translation, they learned that she came from a planet called Ethros, orbiting a star they called Vega. Her world was dying, slowly choking on the smoke and poison that her people had accidentally created through their advanced technology. "We were like you once," Lyrale explained, her musical voice carrying notes of sadness. "We built great cities, flew through the sky, and thought we could control our world. But we made mistakes, big mistakes." She drew pictures of her homeworld, once beautiful, with crystal cities and floating gardens, but now covered in gray clouds and dying forests. Her people, the Ethrosians, were slowly running out of clean air and water. "So we looked to the stars for help," she continued. "We sent small groups to different worlds, hoping to find new homes where some of us could live, not to take over, but to survive." Hassan felt his heart breaking as he listened to her story. This wasn't an invasion or a conquest. It was a desperate search for refuge by a dying civilization. "How long have you been on Earth?" Dr. Qureshi asked gently. Lyrale thought for a moment, then drew a series of symbols that Zara recognized as numbers. 73 of your years, she said. I was part of the first group to reach your planet. What happened to the others? Hassan asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Liralay's expression grew even sadder. Our ship was damaged. In your atmosphere, we crashed in the mountains during a great storm. The others, they were hurt too badly to survive. The ship's emergency system put me in the crystal sleep to keep me alive until rescue could come. But no rescue came. Dr. Qureshi said softly. No, Lirale replied. I have been alone for so long. I thought I would sleep forever. Hassan reached out and gently took her six-fingered hand in his. You're not alone anymore. Over the following days, Lirale revealed even more shocking information. Her people had been quietly studying Earth for over a century, learning about human civilization and trying to find the best places to establish small, peaceful settlements. We never wanted to harm anyone, she explained. We just wanted to live quietly in places where humans don't go. The high mountains, the deep forests, the cold places where your people cannot survive easily. Are there others like you on Earth? Zara asked, her voice full of excitement and wonder. Lirale nodded. 6 more ships were sent after mine. They should have landed in different mountain ranges around your world. But I don't know if any of them survived their journeys. She drew a map showing approximate locations where the other ships might have crashed in the Andes Mountains of South America, the Alps in Europe, the Himalayas in Asia, and other remote mountain ranges. My people are peaceful, she insisted. We only want to share your world, not take it. We have knowledge that could help humans too. Our technology for cleaning air and water, for healing diseases, for growing food in difficult places. Hassan felt overwhelmed by the implications of what she was telling them. Lirale, this changes everything. If your people are really out there, if they're still alive, they need help, she said urgently. The crystal sleep can only last so long. If they're still sleeping, they might not have much time left. Dr. Qureshi was frantically taking notes. We need to tell the authorities. We need to organize search parties. But will they believe us? Hassan asked. Will they help, or will they just want to study Lirale like a laboratory specimen? That question hung in the air like a dark cloud. They all knew that once the government learned about Lirale's revelations, everything would change. The secret was already too big to keep much longer. The next morning, Hassan woke up to find Director Ahmed standing in the medical wing, surrounded by a dozen security officers. The secret was out, Agent Hassan, the director said coldly. We need to talk. Hassan's blood ran cold. Someone had discovered what they were doing. As he was led away for questioning, he caught sight of Lirale watching from the medical room window. Her purple eyes were wide with fear, and he could see her making the soft musical sounds she made when she was frightened. In the interrogation room, Director Ahmed placed a thick file on the table. Agent Hassan, you have violated direct orders, compromised national security, and potentially put this entire facility at risk. What do you have to say for yourself? Hassan looked at the man who had been his boss for years. Sir, that girl is not a threat. She's a refugee. She's alone, scared. And she's been through more trauma than any of us can imagine. She's also not human. Director Ahmed replied sharply. We don't know what she's capable of or what her real intentions are. Her intentions are to survive, Hassan said firmly. And maybe to help us find her people before it's too late. Her people? Director Ahmed's eyes narrowed. What people? Hassan realized he had said too much, but it was too late now. The truth was coming out whether he wanted it to or not, sir. What if I told you that there might be other survivors? Other ships that crashed in different parts of the world? What if we could save them? Director Ahmed leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Agent Hassan, I think you've been spending too much time with our alien visitor. You're starting to think like one of them instead of one of us. Maybe that's exactly what the world needs right now, Hassan replied quietly. Outside the interrogation room, Lirale was having her own conversation with Dr. Qureshi and Zara. She could sense that something was wrong, that the kind humans who had helped her were now in trouble. "I need to help them," she said in her musical voice. "They saved me. Now I must save them." But how could one alien girl save the humans who had risked everything to help her? The answer would shock everyone, including Lyrale herself. Hassan sat in the detention cell, staring at the blank white walls and wondering what would happen to Lyrale. It had been 3 days since his arrest, and no one would tell him anything about her condition. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and couldn't stop thinking about the frightened look in her purple eyes when the security officers had taken him away. Meanwhile, in the medical wing, Dr. Qureshi was facing her own interrogation. Government officials, military leaders, and scientists from around the world had descended on the facility like hungry wolves. Everyone wanted to study Lyrale, to understand her technology, to question her about her people's intentions. "She's just a child," Dr. Qureshi pleaded with Director Ahmed for the 100th time. "Can't you see how terrified she is? She needs compassion, not interrogation." "Dr. Qureshi, this is the most important discovery in human history," the director replied coldly. "We cannot let emotions cloud our judgment. The girl has information that could change everything." But Lyrale wasn't talking. She had retreated into herself, making only the softest musical sounds and refusing to communicate with anyone except Zara. Even then, she would only speak about simple things like food and water, nothing about her people or her technology. Zara spent every moment she could with Lyrale, trying to comfort her and explain what was happening. "They're scared," she told the alien girl. "Humans get mean when they're scared." "I understand fear," Lyrale replied sadly. "My people felt the same fear when our world began to die. But fear should make us kinder, not crueler." On the 4th day, everything changed. A young technician monitoring the facility's communications made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the entire operation. News of Lyrale's existence had leaked to the outside world. Someone had taken photos. Someone had recorded conversations. Someone had shared the incredible story with journalists. And now the whole planet knew about the alien girl found in the mountains. Director Ahmed rushed into the communications center, his face pale with panic. "How did this happen, sir?" "The leak came from multiple sources," the technician reported. "Photos, video clips, recorded conversations. It's all over the internet. Every major news network in the world is running the story." Within hours, the facility was surrounded by reporters, protesters, and curious crowds. Some people held signs demanding that Lyrale be released. Others wanted her studied or even destroyed. Religious groups argued about what her existence meant for humanity's place in the universe. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source. Scientists and researchers from around the world began coming forward with their own evidence. A team in the Swiss Alps reported finding strange metal fragments and energy readings consistent with what had been found at Lyrale's crash site. Mountain climbers in the Andes shared photos of unusual crystal formations they had discovered years earlier but never understood. Dr. Qureshi watched the news reports with growing excitement. "They're finding them," she whispered to Zara. "The other crash sites." Lyrale was right. The pressure on the Pakistani government became enormous. Other countries demanded access to Lyrale. The United Nations called for emergency sessions. World leaders argued about who had the right to speak for humanity in this first contact situation. That's when Hassan made a decision that would shock everyone. During his daily exercise period in the detention facility, he noticed that one of the guards was watching the news coverage with tears in his eyes. The guard was young, probably no older than 25, and he seemed deeply moved by the stories about Lyrale. "She's just a kid, isn't she?" the guard said quietly to Hassan, lost and far from home. Hassan saw his opportunity. "She is, and she's in there alone, surrounded by people who see her as a thing instead of a person." The guard looked around, nervously, then leaned closer. "Agent Hassan, what really happened up there in the mountains?" Hassan told him everything: the discovery, the awakening, Lyrale's story about her dying world and her lost companions. He spoke about her kindness, her intelligence, and her desperate hope that her people might still be alive somewhere on Earth. The guard listened in silence, and when Hassan finished, the young man made a decision that would change history. That night, during the shift change, Hassan's cell door mysteriously developed a malfunction. Security cameras experienced technical difficulties, and Hassan found himself free to move through the facility. He made his way to the medical wing, where he found Dr. Qureshi, Sarah, and Lyrale huddled together in the secure room. The alien girl's eyes lit up when she saw him, and she made a joyful musical sound that filled Hassan's heart with warmth. "Hassan," she said in her accented English, "I was so worried about you." "I'm okay, Lyrale," he said, taking her six-fingered hand in his. "But we need to make a choice. We can stay here and let them treat you like a prisoner, or we can tell your story to the world ourselves." Dr. Qureshi looked at him with understanding. "You want to go public, not just public," Hassan said firmly. "I want to give Lyrale a voice. Let her speak for herself. Let her tell her story in her own words. Let the world see that she's not a threat or a science experiment. She's a refugee who needs our help." Lyrale listened to their plan with growing excitement. "You would do this for me? Risk everything to help me find my people? That's what friends do," Hassan said simply. The next morning, the world woke up to the most extraordinary press conference in human history. Hassan, Dr. Qureshi, and Lyrale appeared on live television, broadcast to every corner of the planet. Lyrale sat between her human friends, her silver hair shining under the studio lights, her purple eyes calm and determined. In her musical voice, translated by Zara, she told her story to the world. She spoke about her dying planet, about her people's desperate search for a new home. She shared her knowledge about the other crash sites, pleading for help in finding any survivors. Most importantly, she offered her people's technology and wisdom to help humanity solve its own environmental problems. "We do not come as conquerors," she said, her words reaching billions of people around the globe. "We come as refugees, as friends, as fellow children of the stars. We ask only for a chance to live in peace and to share what we have learned." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Search teams were organized for every location Lyrale had identified. Scientists volunteered their expertise. People from every nation offered their support. 3 weeks later, the first survivor was found in the Swiss Alps, a young Ethrosian male, still sleeping in his crystal shell but alive. Then another in the Andes Mountains. Then a third in the Himalayas. Hassan stood beside Lyrale as they watched the news coverage of each rescue. The alien girl had tears of joy streaming down her face as she saw her people being carefully awakened and cared for by human medical teams. "Thank you," she whispered to Hassan. "Thank you for helping me save my family." Hassan smiled, thinking about his own daughter and how proud she would have been of what they had accomplished. "Thank you for teaching us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose compassion over fear." The world had changed forever. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they had learned that their first contact with alien life came not through conquest or conflict, but through an act of simple human kindness in the mountains of Pakistan. Lyrale became Earth's first alien ambassador, helping to establish communication with her homeworld and working to build a bridge between two civilizations. Hassan and Dr. Qureshi were honored by the United Nations for their courage and compassion. But for Hassan, the greatest reward was seeing Lyrale smile as she was reunited with her surviving companions, and knowing that sometimes doing the right thing really can change the world.